That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We are talking prayer this month. The science of spiritual alignment. So today and then over the next 4 Sundays, looking at the science of spiritual alignment. And we know there is a 5-step prayer treatment in science of mind, religious science, of course. And so we're going to be looking at all of this. Another framework outside of that mind treatment, which is 5 steps, right? Practitioners, you acknowledge God, recognize God, then you acknowledge that you are a part of this thing called God. And if you really can know that you're one with God, then what you speak, you're not begging for it or wondering if it's going to happen. You're speaking it, making it so. That's 3, right? Expressing the gratitude and then releasing it, right? So another framework over these next 4 Sundays, similar to that. I got four steps here. The science of spiritual alignment. 1, slow down. 2, get clear. 3, lock in. And 4, let go. So that's what we're going to deal with the next 4 Sundays. Today, slow down. Slow down. And so you see the scripture in the bulletin and Psalm 46:10, 46th Psalm, very fascinating. Not too long. I'd encourage you to check that out. Psalm 46. Verse 10 very simply says, "Be still and know that I am God." All right, be still and know that I am God. Our other reading, Saint Teresa of Avila, great mystic, Spanish woman. She was a nun, very, very powerful spiritually, wrote a book called The Interior Castle in the 1500s, which is still a great classic. And she said this: prayer is not about thinking much, but about loving much. And in that love, there is a quiet stillness where God speaks. So we're talking about slowing down as a key component of prayer, the science of spiritual alignment. Here's some little middle school physics question. What are the 3 phases of matter? Yeah, I heard it. Yeah, all right, thank you. Yeah, all right. Solid, liquid, and gas, right? Those are the 3 phases of matter, right? Water, anything, right? Water, it could be ice, that's solid. It could be liquid, that's water. It could be vapor, that's gas, right? 3 phases of matter. Do you know, I saw this February 20th, 2025, Wall Street Journal. The headline was, "Scientists create a new phase of matter." That's interesting. I said, really? Yeah, really? No, they were serious. Wall Street Journal. Scientists create a new phase of matter. And so that got my attention. I dug in a little bit because I know about liquid, solid, and gas. I said, well, let me check this out, right? So I looked into it, and they are saying that they have created something. They call it a topological superconductor. And they're saying that that is the 4th phase of matter. So I said, that's interesting. I kept reading. A topological superconductor, right? So I said, okay, well, what's the topological superconductor? What is that? Well, do you know what a superconductor is? I said, well, what's that? I said, what's topological? And I said, well, then they said, well, do you know what a conductor is? I said, well, what's a conductor? All right. A conductor is, you know what a conductor is. That is any material that conducts electricity. Take your phone charger. That's going to be the best example, just real quick. There's copper wires in there. The copper wires conduct electricity, right? So what's happening? You plug it in, and the electricity, literally the electrons, flow from the wall or from your car, wherever, from the wall through the cord into your phone. Electrons are the energy that charge your phone back up. That's just a regular conductor, a phone charger, or anything that we would use to conduct electricity. The problem with a conductor is a couple of things. One, the electrons are very wild, they're very erratic, they don't have a particular path. You make the cord into the shape of the cord so that they will flow in a particular direction, but they bump into each other, they're flowing, all of these electrons, this power that's charging up the battery. They bump into each other, and every time they bump into each other, they release heat. Maybe you felt the cord warm up, or maybe you feel the phone warm up. It's not warming up because the battery is filling up with charge. It's warming up because extra electricity is shooting off in so many different directions that it starts to warm the phone up. So a conductor like copper wire, it works. You can get electricity from one place to another, but it's not so efficient. Then there's a superconductor. That is when you cool it down. And you know, phones, they don't work as well if it gets too hot, right? Anytime you're dealing with electricity, anytime you're dealing with a charge, it's going to work better in a cooler environment. Why is that? Because the cooler it is, the less the electrons are free to move around and fly in any particular direction. So you cool it down. That's why when I was a kid, we tried this. If the batteries were dying, what did we do with them? Right, yeah, you put them in the freezer. It didn't really help, but old batteries, it did help. But that's why now new Duracells and Energizers, it doesn't do any good. But the thought is, even though you didn't know what you were doing, you were slowing down the chemical reaction so that the energy that the battery releases it at a slower rate. That's what we were trying to do with that. So you got to slow it down. That's what a superconductor is. A topological superconductor, you got to cool it down to what they call absolute zero, which is 0 degrees Kelvin. That's actually negative 273 Celsius, negative 459 Fahrenheit. If you can get it down that cold, negative 459, now the electrons, they slow down. You know, everything kind of slows down when you cool it off, right? The cooler you get. You slow it down to absolute zero. Now these electrons basically aren't moving at all. That's why they call it absolute zero. There is no motion. There's no life. There is no atomic activity when you slow it down to absolute zero. But now when you slow it down to absolute zero, something interesting that they still don't quite know everything about what's happening, but something very interesting happens. The quantum properties of these electrons begin to surface, and it's a superconductor because it's cool and it's a conductor. It's topological. All that means is that something happens on the surface of the material. You cool the material down to absolute zero, to where there is no motion, there is no movement, and then something interesting happens where the particles actually exist in more than one place at one time. And you can control this. And I'm not a complete expert on this, but I did read the article, right? And what it was saying, just some other research, what it was saying is that you cool the conductor down. If it's a copper wire or whatever it is, you cool that down to absolute zero, then other things start to happen on the surface, on the edge of that material. They're calling them ghost electrons. They can't explain this fully yet. They know that it's working. And no matter when you cool it down to absolute zero, now these ghost electrons are released and they do not interact with the rest of reality the way that everything else does. They are not affected by anything, it seems. But you gotta cool it down to absolute zero to a place of stillness in order for this to work. Now, what they're unlocking with this is computers can hold millions of times more data. They can move a lot faster. You know, it's more encrypted, it's millions times more encrypted. They're actually saying what they're learning with this, with these topological superconductors, is that now electricity could flow without any loss. And we could actually save billions of dollars every year. When electricity is flowing over these wires, you can almost hear that electricity popping sometimes. That's waste, that's coming off, that's heat being released. But if we can cool it down right now, but it can't be absolute zero outside and there, but they're working on how to make this work. And they're saying, give it a few years, they're figuring this out. They could save billions of dollars on power. The MRIs, the brain scans are going to be millions of times more precise with this technology that's coming. It's a new phase of matter, topological superconductors. But like I said, in order for it to work, it must be cold to the point where the electrons cannot whiz around, right? So that's when the quantum phenomenon begins to unlock. The cold things get, or for our context here with Psalm 46, the more still things get, the more efficiently the power flows. What does that have to do with prayer? I hope it has something to do with it. Yeah, thank you, Vaughn. I hope so. Yes, it does, right? You get where I'm going, right? All right. All right, good. All right. Prayer. Number one complaint, if we're honest, of prayer is I put it out there and I don't know if it's coming back. I don't know if it's getting answered. I prayed sometimes it gets answered that same day. I prayed sometimes I've been waiting for 30 years. I pray sometimes the opposite thing happens. Even though Jesus said, even though Ernest Holmes said, follow these steps and it has to happen, I'm still dealing with it. It's almost like when I am throwing out that power, that electrical power, I'm throwing it out and it's almost like those power lines, or it's almost like that phone charger. I don't know if some of my intention gets wasted. I don't know what's happening. So if you give, and to measure, just keep it simple, 100 units of electricity coming out of the phone, by the time it gets through the wire, coming out of the wall, by the time it gets through the wire to the phone, you might only have about 77 units getting to the actual phone. The rest is heat, the rest is dissipated, right? If you can cool it down, if you can slow it down, then you're gonna have more efficiency. So sometimes prayer feels like it almost feels like, if I'm honest, it can feel like a slot machine. You pull it and you're like, come on, give me 3 cherries, right? Please. And then if it's not, lemons again, right? That's what it can feel like. You get what I'm talking about. Here's the thesis of what I'm saying today. Prayers speed up when we slow down. Or I could put it another way, the less we strive, the more God moves. And of course, there's no separation between us and God. This is us. This is the point of what I'm saying. Look at Psalm 46. Psalm 46 was written for chaotic times. It was written for times when it felt like everything was falling apart. People didn't know what was going on, right? It talks about, even if the earth give way, even if the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, when the waters roar and foam, when the mountains quake with their surging, right? When the nations uproar, when the kingdoms fall. It says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Then verse 10 says, be still and know that I am God. Can we turn this down just a little bit? Just turn me down just a little bit. Be still and know that I am God. That Hebrew word be still, rapha, it means let go. Be still, let it go. Release control. It's not a passive thing. When you say be still, it's not doing nothing. It's work to let go sometimes when we're used to hanging on. Just like it takes energy to cool it all the way down to absolute zero so that this quantum, and even in the Wall Street Journal, they called it quantum magic. They don't know quite what's happening, how the power is released. All they know is the electrons got to be perfectly still in order for something unexplainable to happen on the surface. The inside has to be still in order for the outside to experience this quantum magic. So prayer is really not so much the words that you speak, but it's where you speak the words from. Speaking the words, because we can say the Lord's Prayer all day, you can say any prayer. But the more still you are, and that's not just physically not moving, that is our minds to experience and know stillness. Saint Teresa of Avila, great 1500s, advanced in metaphysics, was actually known, she was a nun, and she would get so deep in prayer that she would just start flying around the church. I mean, flying in the air, levitating. And it was to the point, this is very, very well documented. If you don't believe me, check it out. It really is. And many people have levitated, If you Google a picture, Deepak Chopra and Michael Jackson, have you seen that picture? Where Deepak Chopra is levitating. This was in Atlantic magazine, and he's explaining how the biofields and all this, how he did it. He's sitting next to Michael Jackson. So levitating is not a big deal. It's really not. I mean, it is a big deal, but it's within our realm of possibility. She would just start flying around the church to the point where the other nuns would say, there she goes again, and they would just grab her and just be like, just sit to her. There she goes again. She said, prayer is not about thinking much, but about loving much. And in that love, there is a quiet stillness where God speaks. She would fly around. Do you understand? She let go. She surrendered to the point where there is no resistance. A little bit about her life. Before she started, she wasn't just born levitating. She says she spent 20 years trying to pray, and she felt like it wasn't getting anywhere. She struggled in prayer for almost 20 years. She said she felt distracted, uninspired. She felt dry. She just couldn't quite get the prayer going. She couldn't get that quantum juice flowing. So she said for 20 years she tried. Nothing was really seeming to happen. She tried forcing the prayer. She tried it with effort. She tried it with discipline. And then she said this, I let go and surrendered into the stillness. And then when I let go and surrendered into the stillness, I entered into a deeper communion with God. So just like we're talking about superconductors and all this, there was spiritual resistance. Everything that the electricity flows through, it flows from the wall to the phone. The wire itself causes some resistance. That means you're not going to get 100% of the power. Similarly for us, I'm 100% God. So are you. We're made in God's image. That's what it is. That's all there is to it. The thoughts, the worries, the cares, the memories, the trauma, all of that is lowering the efficacy. It's not that the power isn't there. It's not that there's some magic word that we haven't figured out yet. We got too much going on. That's why I said, be still and know that I am God. So the turning point for Teresa of Avila, she said, I stopped talking at God and I started resting in God. It's called, she wrote a book, 1500s, The Interior Castle. And she's saying that there are 4 steps. The first step is just mental prayer and meditation. And then you get into meditation. Then she called it the prayer of quiet absorption. Or the prayer of quiet. The prayer of quiet. Which is different from trying to say something in prayer. The prayer of quiet. Then the prayer of quiet, become the stillness, then that's an absorption in God. And then when I can get that absorption, then there's an ecstatic consciousness. Then here comes the quantum magic. Here comes the spark. Here comes what we call an answer to a prayer. But really all it is just God being God, the resistance getting out of the way. You could have all the power in the world, but if you're trying to get it to flow through rubber, you could have all the power in the world. Rubber does not conduct electricity. A worried mind does not conduct godness as well. Okay. No, you got it. So she said, when she let go, now divine energy flows freely. Divine energy flows powerfully, more than she could even handle. Levitation, that is a physical manifestation. See, if the soul can become weightless, the body got to follow. Guess what? If the soul is stressed out, guess what? The body's going to follow. Now, if the soul can release and trust and be in the fullness and be in the stillness, then the body got to follow. She started flying around. It became so normal. Some of the other nuns caught on to it too. But after a while, they just said, there she goes again. And they would just drag her back down and say, cut it out. They say, go levitate over washing them dishes if you levitate. She described this as God breathing God's self into her soul. It's like a superconductor, right? Where the heat, that's the energy loss. You have to remove the heat to have improved conductivity. She removed the heat of distraction, the heat of worry, the heat of effort. And then the divine energy could move most freely through her. And it worked. Jesus said the same thing. It says in the Bible, Jesus often went to a solitary place to pray. Why was that? Because everyone else was talking and worrying and arguing, and you can't be in that. Or even if you're physically in it, you can't be mentally, spiritually in it. All of that is dissipation of the divine power that we all have. It's just how efficiently are we conducting the power that is already very clearly at hand. Jesus went to a quiet place to pray, right? When the storm was raging, Mark chapter 4, all the disciples were freaking out. You know where Jesus was? He was asleep in the boat. And then they come, how can you sleep at a time like this? We're all going to die. Be still and know that I am God. Older generations, and still to this day, they talk about you got to have a prayer closet, right? Now, don't get so new thought that you miss the importance of a prayer closet, of a quiet place. If not a physical closet, whatever it is. Your car can be your prayer closet when you're by yourself, right? A space wherever you are, if you can quiet down. Now, then as I can get into the practice of quieting down, now I can be quiet in the midst of other folks not quiet. What do you do in the face of, what are we dealing with today? I can't believe Donald Trump, you hear what he said to Zelensky? Can you believe it was another plane crash? Can you believe, I don't know what we're going to do in the price. I can't even have 2 boiled eggs anymore. Meanwhile, God is being 100% God flowing through us. The conductivity cannot conduct like it needs to and unlock the other quantum mysteries, the new phase of matter that we're called to be. With the superconductor, the real work, so all the, and they call it quantum magic, all of this unexplained behavior that opens up untold power in this new phase of matter, that's happening on the surface. That's what topological means. It's just happening on the surface of the material. But the real work is taking place beneath the surface. So when the prayer is answered, well, how did they manifest, a car? How did they manifest this? How did they, that's just what's happening on the outside. But the real work is happening on the inside in stillness. Now I understand why they tell people just chill out. Now I understand. Slow down, cool it out, relax. So you got me. Superconductors, when they can get to absolute zero, there is no resistance and there's full power. And when we can get to absolute zero, drop down to the stillness, be still and know that I am God, there's no resistance and there's full power. Wall Street Journal said they found a new phase of matter, and it seems that they did. They're getting control over this thing, these superconductors that are unlocking new power for all of us. So there is a new phase of matter that's been discovered, but also there's an opportunity for there to be a new us. We can be a new phase of matter. Are we willing to slow down so that God can move that much faster in us, as us? And just in a brief prayer treatment, acknowledging the fullness of God, which is more power, more glory, more wisdom, more insight, more understanding than any of us can ask or imagine. And that is us too. Matter of fact, we're so godly that we have a choice to turn it on and shut it off at will. We recognize God moves at the speed of stillness. The moment we can be still, not try to force the connection, the power can flow freely. We acknowledge God is moving. We're not forcing it. We are living in, enjoying, allowing the flow with great gratitude, and can let it go. So it is. Amen.